if you would sit with both of your feet flat on the floor, your spine straight, and with your right hand, I want you to gently touch your left shoulder. And I want you to release the tension, any past thoughts or future plans. We're in this moment right now. And with your left hand, I want you to gently touch your right shoulder and let go of anything that could that would prevent you from being present at this time. Let go of things from the past, and also the future. I'd like you to breathe with me now. One deep breath in, hold it for 3 seconds, and let it out for 4. If we can do that one more time. Deep breath in, hold it for 3 seconds, and let it out for 4. I love that exercise because it shows you that you can let out far more than what you let in. So if it's okay, I thought that we would go ahead and I would introduce our speaker for this evening. I'm really excited about this, y'all. Tess Amoruso. Oh, what could I say? Tess is an artist, a permaculturist, environmental activist, and much more. She has been a member of Mothers Out Front, Hampton Roads since 2016. She holds a master's degree in urban affairs and policy analysis from New School University in New York City, an MFA in visual studies from the then joint program at ODU in Norfolk State in Norfolk, Virginia, and has a BA in interdisciplinary studies with a concentration in political science and economics from New York University. She has done years of independent research on environmental issues, including research on the climate emergency happening right now. That's the topic of tonight's webinar. So if you will please all join me in welcoming Tess and the Crown webinar. Thank you, Tess.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. So tonight's presentation is about the climate emergency happening now in 2020. It's not the climate emergency that has been happening for most of our adult life, my adult life at least. It's the one happening right now this year. Probably everyone here remembers that January of this year started out with wildfires throughout Australia. And this past summer, we saw massive record-breaking wildfires in California, the United States, Southwest, West Coast, Siberia, and so forth, and also a record-breaking hurricane season. We do know the reason that this extreme weather is happening right now. It's because in September, which is the time of year that the Arctic reaches its ice minimum for the year, there was a near record low ice at the Arctic Circle, and it was very near what is called a blue ocean event, which is by definition when the Arctic reaches less than 1 million square kilometers of ice. So it's virtually ice-free. Equally as concerning, in the month of October, when the ice generally starts to reform, it did not reform as it normally does. And at this moment, scientists are quite concerned about the state of the Arctic and what is happening at this moment. So to understand what's happening, we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about the overall situation at the Arctic Circle, which is warming at more than 2 times the rest of the planet. Some estimates are that it's actually warming at closer to 3 times the rest of the planet. This graphic explains what happens when we don't have enough ice at the Arctic Circle. Basically, we've had abrupt thaw, which we're going to talk about a little bit more very shortly, which destabilizes the polar vortex. This graphic on the left illustrates what sort of a normal, stable polar vortex looks like, and then that customary strong jet stream that we're used to seeing in terms of normal worldwide weather patterns. What happens is that when the jet stream weakens, it gets wavy, and as you can see in that same illustration in the bottom right, that leads to both greater and more unpredictable storms in both the Atlantic and Pacific. And also that warm air pushing up north leads to more wildfires, which of course we experienced this year in the United States West Coast and elsewhere. That's the first concern with the loss of the Arctic ice. The second is that as the Arctic sea ice declines, the thawing releases permafrost from methane from the permafrost. This is a problem because there's a gigantic reservoir of methane estimated to be a 50 gigaton reservoir stored in the East Siberian Arctic shelf alone. It is very likely to be emitted, and actually there's evidence that it is already starting to release as the seabed warms. The question is, how fast will this massive reservoir of methane be released, and what can we do about it? I added this picture because you could see what that looks like. That's actually a picture of methane bubbles coming from the thawed permafrost, coming through what's called a thermokarst lake. Here's a picture, here's a wider view of what those thermokarst lakes look like. I actually took this slide from the Woods Hole Research Center presentation, where a number of the next slides are coming from. It's also referenced at the very end of this presentation. There's links to all these slides and places where the information came from. But here's a close-up view of what it looks like. The permafrost just literally is thawing and melting, and that's what it looks like as it collapses. The problem with that is that because of the amount of methane that is stored in the permafrost, if it were released entirely, it would have to be the equivalent of 150 tons cumulatively of methane, which is on par with the current US emissions. And also that permafrost thaw is estimated to use up approximately 25% of the allowable emissions to stay below the IPCC goal of 1.5 degrees centigrade. But the biggest danger of that is that the permafrost carbon emissions were not included in the global carbon budgets at all. And the reason for that is that there was a problem in the modeling. The modeling had expected what scientists called gradual permafrost thaw, which meant that if the permafrost had thawed over decades, say 2 or 3 decades or more, it would have allowed a vegetative layer to form, and that in itself would have become a carbon sink. So it would have offset any, potentially the release of methane. Instead, what's actually happening, and this graphic is perfect to see, on the left is what was expected, that there would be this active layer that would form a vegetative layer and be able to absorb carbon. But instead, what's really happening is what we see on the right, which is we're having these massive thermokarst lakes form that are emitting both carbon dioxide and methane. The take home from that is that this abrupt thaw could potentially double the permafrost carbon feedback we're looking at this century. It's efficiently releasing old permafrost carbon, We know that it has happened in the past. Abrupt thaw accelerated when the climate warmed 14,000 years ago. Scientists have that in the record. And we know it's accelerating now, and it will continue as the climate warms in the future. And at this moment, there isn't consensus if the Arctic has become no longer a carbon sink, but is now actually becoming a carbon source. One thing we should get an understanding of is what the potential effects of a blue ocean event would be. Again, a blue ocean event being defined as a period of time when the Arctic is blue. It doesn't have, the great ice. First, of course, is the latent heat that results from that. Second is the loss of the albedo effect. The albedo is simply the ice reflects it reflects sunlight, so it acts as a reflector rather than allowing the heat to sink into the waters. Of course, it creates a feedback loop of more melting of the ice sheet. It increases water vapor. This combination of the melting ice sheet and water vapor would lead to sea level rise. And disruption of the jet streams, which unfortunately it's already happening. We're witnessing it this year. And additional methane release, which we just talked about, and unfortunately is first now being observed from Alaska to Siberia. All of these combined changes in the jet stream, disruption of weather patterns, could lead to greater global food crises, which we've already witnessed in certain parts of the world, which of course could and has in certain places resulted in climate refugees, which of course is a threat, what the military calls a threat multiplier for regional and global conflict. But the real bottom line is a blue ocean Arctic would lead to unspeakable consequences. And what I mean by that is in the entire history, the entire time that there have been humans on this planet, we have had a fairly stable planetary climate, in large part based on the great ice being in the Arctic and what we saw earlier in the graphic about how the jet streams work. So this presentation is proposing what we're calling a CROWN mandate. And basically CROWN is an acronym for Climate Restoration Ongoing Worldwide Now, with the primary focus, or the top of that crown, being an understanding that we must have a worldwide effort to cool the Arctic. And that has to happen now, this year, this decade. At the same time, we have to do carbon capture, which we have technologies to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. We have to stop fossil fuels. So we ideally need a complete moratorium on new fossil fuels. We need to have worldwide reforestation, which is going to be a huge part of the regreening of the earth. Regenerative agriculture, of course, is going to be huge. We're switching to local farming and gardening, massive conservation programs, and education of women, because generally anywhere in the world, the more women are educated, both the size of families goes down and the standard of living for those communities go up. So I'm looking at this time as a time when we really have a unique social moment to both restore the climate and to renew the face of the earth. I think it's very important to add that at this moment, just 2 days ago, Reuters had a article on things that President-elect Biden can do immediately to take some quick steps to set us on that road. One is rejoin the Paris agreements, reverse the Trump-era environmental rollbacks. We can start building the Green New Jobs infrastructure, stop oil and gas subsidies, halt the Keystone XL pipeline, all of which I'd like to say was promised to us throughout the campaign. And I'd also like to add, and it didn't make it to this slide, but I've seen just today or yesterday, I think. He has also talked about starting a White House office on the climate emergency, which is a wonderful idea. The other thing that I wanted to bring to awareness is we can support the Arctic Ice Project. The Arctic Ice Project has been around for a long time now, and their mission is to preserve and restore the Arctic ice to help stabilize the global climate. They believe they have a material solution that can mitigate the worst effects that we're seeing now, and they project that their technology could buy us as much as 15 more years for the planet to decarbonize. The reason I wanted to specifically mention them, and again, there is a link at the end of this presentation to everything we're talking about tonight, including them, is that right now, what they are doing looks very promising, but they're only having success on an experimental level because that's all the funding that they have. What they actually need is massive funding to do what they're doing, but to do it in a wider scale and really get it going and really see if it works. The other thing that's important, and I think this is worth mentioning, is there is a proposal out there by Dr. Malcolm Light, which uses the acronym ANGELS Project, and it's a proposal for preventing, this is their title, not mine, prevention of Arctic methane-induced catastrophic global climate change by extraction of methane from beneath the permafrost. Basically, it's a proposal to capture that methane as it's already being released and safely bring it to nearby places, which the closest, of course, would be Russia and Canada for use. But the real point and the real bottom line of this presentation that I'm hoping that I would convey to everyone is that we need to save the Arctic ice immediately. We need to create a critical mass consciousness that we need to cool the Arctic and have a massive worldwide mobilization for climate restoration. That picture that you're seeing in this particular slide is something scientists are calling zombie fires, that they think are fires that have actually from the previous spring kind of never really extinguished. So as soon as it like warmed up a little, basically the fires just came back. Again, another phenomenon that was never witnessed before is being witnessed. There's a picture of one. So again, I came up with this acronym CROWN to imply that there are all these tenets that are going to be needed for climate restoration. It is going to happen worldwide. It has to start now, but most importantly, first and foremost, has to be an understanding that we must figure out how to somehow cool the Arctic and save the ice. I think, and I would really agree with this slide, that this is the most important year in history in terms of the climate emergency. We really do need an emergency mobilization to protect humanity from climate catastrophe. We must get climate restoration into the lexicon now. The other thing that's very important, and I wanted to take a minute to talk about this, is, you know, we have also tried to understand this from a sort of psychological point of view. Why is it that most people understand that the climate emergency is real, and we have a pretty big, you know, collective consensus on that, but nothing is happening, and or it's not happening in the way that it needs to happen in a big way? And the reason for that is that in human psychology, we need to believe that danger is near, literally near us, to act. So if we think it's either far away, like far away someplace else, or far away in the future, we don't think it's an immediate or a close danger to us. So there's something in our psychology that doesn't make us act. And there have been studies that when you ask folks, do they think climate change is real? Yes. Do they think it's impacting people in the world? Yes. This is majority of people. Do you think it's impacting you? Majority of people, no. They don't think it is now. So that's a real challenge, and I think that's a huge part of the challenge that we need to overcome in our environmental work, and certainly in the work and, you know, promoting the CROWN mobilization. Secondly, is humans are herd animals so that we know we need a critical mass of people to turn direction. We don't need everyone. We don't even need a majority. We just need that critical mass. So that actually could work for us, because I feel like there's so many of us in the worldwide environmental movement that once we all got on the same page and really understood, the extent of the crisis, and particularly the crisis at the Arctic Circle, we can hopefully turn, our attention to that in that direction. But the other point I really hope that I'm able to convey in this presentation is that this is not a drill. Like, this is happening now, this year, as we speak. I mean, there's another storm right now happening in Central America, a big storm. And we have to figure out what is it that we need to do and how. I'd like to say something came to me, a really good metaphor for, how are we going to deal with this in the midst of the health crisis and all the other crises that we're looking at this moment. And what came to me is, it's as if we're all on a bus, right? And we're traveling on this bus, and there's a wasp flying around. And obviously, this wasp is really bad. It's dangerous. If it gets some people, it's going to hurt them. Certain people could have an allergic reaction, could be, fatally dangerous to them. It's bad. We have to deal with that. But at the same time, there's a fire smoldering under the bus in the cargo section that's just smoldering, that's happening. And if all of us on the bus are putting all our attention to just, we got to deal with this, these wasps on the bus, then we're potentially letting that fire smolder, which could indeed take out the whole bus. So in this metaphor, of course, the COVID crisis is the wasp, and the climate emergency at the Arctic is the smoldering fire. I mean, it's there. We have to deal with it. Unfortunately, we have all these other things vying for our attention that are important, and we do have to deal with, but we somehow have to get our attention and our collective attention on the climate emergency. I do want to say that another big purpose, at least for me, and I'm so grateful to my team members for helping, put this together, is that I believe that we have to have a new story for a new Earth now. And that's where, if we look at what the tenets of this, what we're calling this a crown mobilization are, in terms of not just the green energy infrastructure, but the, regenerative agriculture and, and planting 1 trillion trees. Maybe it won't be 1 trillion trees, could be 1 billion trees. But all those things are indeed going to create a thriving new world. Even the mobilization, the mass mobilization that it will take, that is all the countries in the world, to deal with the crisis at the Arctic, will be something that we haven't seen, maybe we've seen on the scale of World War II, but this time in creation of a beautiful Earth. And I believe that we have it in our powers. I think that the key thing is we have to have a vision. We have to have a vision of the mission. And we have to know that it's possible, right? Because if we don't think it's possible, then that creates inertia. That's not going to help us either. I just threw this slide in the end because I wanted to say again that the mobilization at the Arctic is going to take a worldwide effort, unlike what we've seen before, except perhaps in World War. But this time for building a thriving and beautiful new Earth. And I still think there's hope. I'm honestly the type of person that is an optimist. I believe in the human spirit. If I didn't think there was hope, I wouldn't be here talking to y'all tonight. I will say that there are a lot of people in the climate science world, let's call it, that are unfortunately think that, maybe we've already reach past that tipping point, but I refuse to go there because I'm a mother and I feel it's my responsibility to do everything in my power to keep us moving in the direction we have to go. And I want to conclude by saying my greatest hope really is in all of us here in the room tonight, and the fact that we've shown up, we're all doing the work that we're doing, that we've given up time on our Tuesday night, to be here and talk about this. And that's really my greatest hope, where my hope lies. So I thank you all for your attention. Thank you for listening. I had intended to keep this fairly short so we have some time for some announcements from our group and also for discussion. I do want to add that when we send, if you send us your email, and we'll send you both a thank you for attending, but we'll send you like a copy of this presentation, has all these live links that have the information, you know, about the things that we talked about tonight. So I think that's it for me. I think I'm going to stop my screen share. I think I did great on time, just like we timed it. So I'm super happy about that.